Hey there, it's Robin, and you're listening to Healthy Habits for a Healthier Home. I'm here to help you create a healthier life, one simple shift at a time. If you're a mama ready to ditch toxins, clean up your family's nutrition, and build daily habits that support your well-being, you're definitely in the right place. Each episode is packed not only with education, but practical tips and tools to help you transform your health and your home without that feeling of overwhelm. So let's take this journey together to create a thriving, low-tox home for you and your family. If you're ready, say, I am ready. Now let's get into this episode. Hey y'all, welcome back. Super excited to have Allison on. We're going to just dive right in. We're talking about body embodiment of physical movement. And so I'm super excited for a lot of reasons. And as we kind of unfold Allison's story, we're going to also get to some takeaways that you guys can try on this week. And if you have, kids that are in dance or kids that are, had been in dance before, I think this will be a good episode for us moms as well to just navigate life after dance. So welcome, Allison. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Robin. I'm happy to be here.
So let's kind of start with your dance background and sort of like how that unfolded for you. And then how did that lead you to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah. So I didn't have the traditional, start when I was 5 type thing, although I had always been dancing. I kind of grew up in the 80s and came home from school and, put on the Stevie Wonder records and, was out in the backyard dancing to Madonna and all the great stuff we had. Um, But I grew up in a house of police officers and detectives. So the arts weren't really like, it's like, oh, Allison's just bopping around in the backyard. It wasn't like, oh, maybe we should, put her in dance classes. So I was pretty much a shy, awkward kid, and took me a while to get myself in a place where I would then eventually, go into a dance class. And my first experience was on day one. The teacher came in, this was a ballet class, slammed the door and immediately started yelling that we were never going to be anything. And she didn't know our names, she didn't know who we were, nothing. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. I really feel like I'm supposed to be here, and I really feel like I'm a like I knew because I've been, I knew that I was a dancer, but I was like, I don't know if this path is for me, because apparently if you get to this level where you're teaching, you're really angry. And I was just trying to make
All
meaning of
right.
what I was experiencing because I couldn't understand. I'm like, this is dance, this is fun, this is good. We're all happy to be here. Why is it bad? So at that moment, like something already was like high alert, hyper vigilant, like, okay, like we're here to do something fun, but something's not okay. So as I went on
How old?
in,
I'm just curious. How old were you when
yeah,
that
I
happened?
was in a, mid early teens,
Okay.
kind of
So
like at the
what's
stage almost where they tell you like, it's too late.
I think what's
Yeah.
so interesting about that is when you're younger than that, when your brain is less developed than a teenager, you just are like, oh, okay, this is how this is. And then you can make it fun because you're just so little. But at your age, you kind of had, some awareness
I
of
had
like,
some wits about me.
that's
Yeah.
not normal. So
Yeah.
how did she get from a dancer to a mean lady or a strict lady
Right.
or saying unkind, unencouraging things? Because it's not really
Right.
helpful when someone says you're not going anywhere.
Right.
So
Yeah.
interesting.
So it was a very interesting time. And I look at that as actually a blessing of coming into it later, because I think if I had started maybe when I was younger with that type of teacher, taking in that level of toxicity, you don't know what's really happening. And I would have just normalized it, perhaps, if I was
Yeah.
like, too young to really get what was happening, the way that it happens. I call it like the lineage of abuse. It's sort of just the same way that, you know, somebody has an abusive father and they have children and they say, oh, I'll never do that. And then they go ahead and they, do the same thing to their kids that was done to them. It's just this thing that nobody questions because they're
Mm.
of the hierarchy of it. So I think because of the times that we're in and things have changed so much around becoming more sensitive to different things and thinking more about how we treat people overall, especially in the last decade. It's the conversation is much more normalized and open now, but the scarring is still there, especially for my generation and even, some of the generation maybe just after me who grew up in a lot of toxicity because she wasn't the first or the last teacher that, have that approach or have that attitude, I found that that was pretty much like a 50-50 chance. Like you're going to get a teacher and it's going to be somebody who's pretty angry and aggressive, or someone who really is there and can connect. And when I did have the 50% of other teachers who really could connect and see and be with you, and you could feel this level of safety in the room, it was like, well, everything just then became available. It was like, the hypervigilance, like all of a sudden you could actually be in your body more. You could find a deeper level of expression. You weren't in fear. So as I was probably in my early 20s, I I was like, there's something here with teaching for me, that I really feel like I want to become a teacher who can teach technique, who can teach people to be great dancers without ever making them feel bad about themselves. I don't think that's a prerequisite to being a great teacher. So, without consciously knowing, like, okay, these are the steps I'm going to take, I just held that intention of this is what I want to do. And I really let life unfold for me in many ways from that. But I started teaching also very young, probably before I should have, or before I knew what I was doing. I got offered a teaching job. And right away, I knew it was my calling. I was like, I've never felt so fulfilled in my life just by having these women or these girls, these young women walk into the classroom and feel one way. Maybe they're a little down, maybe they're a little something. And we just spent the last half hour, doing this, and they are bouncing out of the room. They are in their aliveness, they're in their joy. And I was like, oh, this is what I'm here to do. So I knew
I
at that
love
moment
that.
when I was in my
I
early
love that
20s. Yeah.
because you didn't allow something that you knew was not right to stop you from continuing the journey, but you could place it in a different place, right? You could say this isn't okay, so I'm going to lean into more of the teachers that are encouraging me, are good for me, are able to teach me in a way that resonates and allows me to be within my body. And I think that's really, really important. And the word strict really comes to mind because
Mm,
I had a couple of dance teachers. I didn't go like all the way back. There was a few years that I danced, and they were
mm,
just really, really strict. And it does put you in fear, right? And I don't necessarily know it's intentional, but that's probably just how they were trained. So they're just following like that repetitive cycle. But I'm glad that you placed yourself where you were and recognized that there was a difference and you could teach differently. And kids will learn from not a strict, toxic situation. They can learn and still be wonderful dancers, and even better because they're confident, because they know who
well,
they are, because they feel a feeling inside. So I don't necessarily think it's bad to have a teacher once or twice that you recognize is not great, because then it really
mm,
shows you how you want to be different. So and maybe you did start teaching too early, but sometimes in teaching, as a teacher a long time ago, it's like you have to just get in there and get your feet wet. And as long as you're a
exactly.
compassionate person, as long as you can keep control of the behaviors in the classroom, it's an opportunity for you to grow with them. And I think that's almost better because you're not so up here that this is how it is only. You let the kids kind of help
Mhm.
foster the vibe of the classroom, really. And
Right, right. And I was more interested in the dancers as, what they were bringing and how to bring the best out of them, and not looking so much at what do I need to instill of my things into them and make them this. It was more like, who are they? How do I
Mhm.
bring out the best of their expression and what they have inside? How do I
Oh, I love that.
foster an environment that allows them to touch something in themselves that they don't know is even there?
Yeah.
And that's those kinds of questions really drove me. And eventually I did my master's degree in dance, and I went through the whole thing, even though I had so many people, even in college, who were like, well, if you didn't start dancing, when you were 5, you've got no chance of doing it. I mean, I had so much discouragement. It was unreal. But anyway, I did my master's degree and I ended up being
Good for
a
you.
college professor in New York. And semester after semester, we would go around and I would, ask them, how were things for you? How was, like we kind of do just like a little general check-in as we were closing out the year. And I just remember this one year in particular, the higher level students who were like competition dancers, they said this was the first dance class I ever felt safe to be myself in.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa. And this is before I had started the teacher training of what I do now. And that just was a real light bulb moment. Like, this is the
Yeah.
first place. And you're like 20. This is
Yeah.
the first place. And then some of them were like crying, like the other teachers told me that I was fat and told me I was this. And now I'm
Mm,
like back and, I got my confidence back again. Now I feel like myself again. And it was like,
mm.
oh, wow, like this is bigger than I realize. Like people need this more than, it's bigger than I realized. So that was really a check-in for me as well, just to see that this field is really starving for this kind of connecting to students and doing things in a different way.
Yeah, I love that. And so that led you into somatics?
So not necessarily. I had been in somatics from a very early age as well. I took my first yoga class when I was 15.
Okay.
So I had been more or less studying dance parallel to yoga. Um, so I think that gave me an informed way of being with, understanding breathing, understanding grounding, understanding these different layers of what a yoga practice actually holds. I also became a yoga teacher shortly thereafter in my early 20s as well. And then I did massage therapy work. I was studying all these different forms of hands-on healing, and it brought me into a different place inside myself that I didn't even know that I have. Because as I was doing hands-on healing work, what I understood about myself that I had never known was that I was highly empathic. It wasn't something that we talked about in the
Mhm.
80s, 90s, or even, early 2000s. And I started to realize, like, oh, I've got a high degree of empathy. And I've always thought that was sort of a curse, like you're really sensitive.
Mhm.
Um, but the sensitivity I realized was a real big strength, and it gave me an opportunity to really feel what somebody else was feeling and be able to guide them as such. Um, and so when I actually teach inside my teacher training right now in the embodied dance teacher training, the first thing we start with is empathy as a superpower. How do you use that sense of being able to feel and trust it so that you can connect better with what's around you?
Yeah, I love that. I want to
So
pause
yeah,
really quick and just
sure.
kind of back up to yoga for a second because
Sure.
there's a lot of women in midlife that
Mm,
maybe dabbled in yoga a little bit here, but more so from a perspective of I'm going to exercise, like this is my exercise. This is my not really understanding. And I was that person. So, I mean, I've done like yoga on and off during the COVID time when we were home. I was like, well, I'm going to do this every day because I got nothing else to do and I need something, and I started to like really connect and to understand like breath and things. And it's taken me, all these years to like really build up. And after a very chaotic end of last year, I was like, I'm going like back to yoga, but out of the
mm,
house. Like I'm going to a studio, I'm going to where I can have community of, and I've been saying, at the beginning of the year, it's saved my life because it reminded me to pause. It
mm,
reminded me how important our breath is. And I think it's such a missed opportunity when people just look at yoga as an exercise routine or as a way to move your body. Like it's so
mm.
much more than that. And it's not and
Absolutely.
you don't have to make it spiritual and you don't have to make it woo woo and you don't have to do, but it's literally learning how to connect your inside yourself. It is the embodiment,
Absolutely.
right? And so if
Mm,
you're listening and maybe you've taken a yoga class years ago and you're like, this wasn't for me, I really feel like in midlife, when we are rediscovering ourselves and we are figuring out, and especially if you've had kids and they're gone and you're trying to refigure out who you are and what you're going to do with your life and just all of the things, there's a grief that happens
mm,
when your kids leave the house, even though you're like excited for your children and everything. It's just a grief of what you've known has changed. And that's 20, if you
mm,
have two kids, it's 18, 20, 22 years of your life that is now different. And so
mm.
I think yoga can be a very good way to rediscover yourself in a way from your breath, from the connection of your body. So um, I see how that's important in your
Absolutely.
journey, right? I see like that's a piece of the puzzle for you
Absolutely.
that
It
has,
completely informed the way that I teach and the way that I work, especially early on. And still, it still does. I mean, I taught
right.
yoga for over 20 years, and it was definitely something that impacted. I used to say it's just the glue that holds me together,
Yeah. Yeah. I
because it was like it provided that sense of being grounded and knowing how to navigate some of those internal spaces despite what was going on around in the external environment. So I really felt like it was a toolbox for being in a chaotic world. Is definitely, having a yoga practice and having a yoga teacher who, like you said, has more of a depthful capacity to bring people back into relationship with their body, because that's truly what it's all about. It's not just about how good you look in your yoga pants, or even though, like, that's the thing that makes me cringe about it. And I kind of, so many different things, but yeah, the image of yoga, and especially the social media image of yoga, I find much of it just turns me completely off, if I'm going to be honest, because it's turned into a parade of ego, and that was never the intention of it. So it's like you're doing the
Interesting.
opposite of what it's really about. It's about going in.
Right. Instead of showcasing the
Anyways.
out. Yeah. No, that's a really, really good point. I think that's really
Yeah.
interesting. Um, when we talk about somatics, I've talked to a couple of different people throughout podcasting, and it is definitely something that all people can utilize, right? And learn for better health and just wellness in general. But what are a couple of practices you always find yourself returning um, to ground you, to bring you back? Because we always have chaos, we always have stress. Like life, there's never going to be a life without stress until you're not here any longer. It's just not the way it is. So,
Yeah,
like,
and especially on this kind of, the times
yeah,
that we're living through right
that's
now,
right.
it's
And
just
so,
one
do you have
chaotic
three?
thing after
It doesn't have
another.
to be three, but do you have a few practices that come to mind that you're like, I always go back, revert to this, just to give people an
Mhm.
idea of what that
Yeah,
could look like?
absolutely. Like in the moment, what I notice, I'll have to catch myself, because I'll notice there's like this underlying agitation or anxiousness. And if I go unchecked about that, that will ruin my day, or,
Mm,
conversations, and it will just not go well. And what I've noticed is if I can catch these moments of feeling perhaps overwhelmed, rushed, or anxiousness, and I can just do three things: pause, breathe, and feel. And then four, acknowledge what the feeling is. Immediately, almost things start to dissipate. I'm like, oh, I've got this. First of all, okay, pause. I'm just going to pause. I'm going to place my hand on my heart. I'm just going to close my eyes for a moment, and I'm going to feel what's here right now. Okay, I just had that disturbing conversation, and I'm feeling a little anxious about what might happen if this goes that way. And I just start to name honestly, like, what I'm really concerned about to myself, instead of overriding it and just keep going, because I don't want to feel it. And I just let
mhm,
myself feel it, like, oh, that makes me feel a little anxious and makes me feel a little fearful, because if that doesn't happen, then I'm afraid of this thing going wrong, and I'll just name these things, because what I've realized in the healing arts, like doing hands-on healing and just walking people through the dark nights of their souls so much, is that if you can bring the thing in front of you that you think you're most afraid of and really look at it, and you just go, oh, okay, I think, okay, it starts to dissipate. It starts to have less power over you. And it can only really have power over you when it stays in the unconscious. So when you just say, okay, I'm feeling this, this is part of what's in my reality right now. I'm breathing, I'm feeling it, I'm acknowledging it. And then from there you can sort of make a choice with it. Okay, like I feel like I need to just shake it off a little bit, maybe go take a walk. If you have the space, maybe put on some music and dance with it a little bit. But I think the body for me really processes movement. So some people go to the gym, some people go take a run in nature. Um, but if you can be conscious of what you're feeling and bring movement to it, all the better. The body knows how to process through movement. This is what I've discovered in my work. So those are my tools. Those are my go-tos, and that's what I do every morning before I even really get started.
I really, really love that. And it is something personally that I have been working on, like just naming
Mm,
things, and not just naming it and having an awareness, but if it's a conversation with somebody else, being able to articulate, this is how I'm feeling. This feeling keeps
absolutely.
coming up because of this situation. But I think the
Absolutely.
one thing that I talk a lot about, and also with my clients, is like when you're having these feelings and these thoughts, when you do pause and you are aware and you give
Mhm,
yourself the space, the question is this something that's serving me? Or
mhm.
is this something that I'm fabricating that's causing more anxiousness than what reality is really going to be? And I always look to past experiences. Like You were anxious about this, and this was the outcome. Now, there are some things that you are anxious, that you do worry, especially as a parent, and they're not going to go away, but you still have to say it out loud and you have to express that to your child. And I think in me learning that about myself, it's helping me to articulate with other people. I'm worried if this is a situation now, what is it going to look like when X, Y, and Z happens with my mom? It's like, if little thing is doing this, what is it going to look? So I don't even think I would have thought about those things to be able to articulate it. But I think through yoga, through grounding, through breath work, through getting still, and like you said, that pause, that was my word last year. And it's a really pivotal word because we typically don't give ourselves the time to pause, right? We just shoot through and you yell and you
productive.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Pausing is not productive.
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. So that actually leads me into another topic, but like body as authority versus your mind as the authority. So how do you articulate that? Because I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
To look at the two sides of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I think about body as authority, and this is actually a little short offering that I'm having as well right now for people, neuroscience, if we look at even kind of the little that I know and have studied about it. So our body is constantly processing information beneath the conscious awareness, right? It's through the nervous system, through the limbic brain, through the sensory pathways, right? It's like kind of tracking our safety, it's tracking threat, it's tracking resonance. And as a great lead in from what you were just saying, without feeling, thinking can take you just so far out of your authority because you can never really solve a problem through thinking of something that's going on in a feeling nature, right? You can't kind of think your way, which is why a lot of people, side note, who are often in a talk therapy for decades never really get anywhere because they're sometimes not really meeting the body or they're not meeting the feeling sensations inside of it. So I look at the body as a compass and I look at how humans have moved through the times from what I want to say, like hundreds of years ago, before we had language, right? Before we had all these different forms of identity, right? Sensing and responding and attuning to ourselves and our environment was more survival, right? We weren't trying to figure everything out and get places. And I'm not saying that that's the optimal way to be, but we've lost so much sense of what's here, what's real, what's being felt, and what's in the kinesthetic field. And in losing sense with the kinesthetic field, you've lost an intelligence. I feel like this sense of being able to be in your own kinesthetic awareness and in that kinesthetic field is a form of intelligence that is slowly being kind of trained out of us, per se, over, to bring in logic, to bring in now all these forms of technology and AI and
I was just going to
replacing.
say that. Right. Yep.
And this is where I find it really dangerous territory because when we lose connection to that and we stop trusting it and we stop bringing that in as part of our daily awareness, it starts kind of atrophying.
Yeah.
And they've done studies on this as a side note where, they're saying that this is the first generation because they're so impacted by AI that they're not using parts of their brain and the parts of the brain are not developing the same way. And so this is going to be problematic in terms of, in my opinion, our humanity.
Yeah.
Right, because when we start to get overly influenced and we have this creative problem solving and this idea of kinesthetic awareness and ability to feel and connect emotionally to another person, that's very dangerous. We're moving into a time where we're completely outsourcing our power. So when I say body as authority, it very much relates to how do we stay in relationship with the feeling body? How do we give that priority and trust it so that it becomes this anchor and guide for us, right? Because if we just stay in the mind and we stay with this is what I'm being told to do, and I'm not really working that part of my brain out because I'm outsourcing my creativity, I'm outsourcing what I think I should
Thinking.
do. You're constantly cutting that cord.
Mhm.
So, yeah, were you going to say something?
No, I was just saying that you're cutting off thinking. You're cutting
You're
off
cutting off.
the ability to think, to reason, to make decisions, to critically think, to to do a lot of things. And I think, like you just said, the the technology portion, and I think my kids are that generation, right? Where they've just grown up pretty much with a device, whether it's 24/7, whatever. I mean, they're now kind of adultish, so it's they got to control themselves, you know. And it's very hard because it's
Mhm.
addictive. And
It's
but
very addictive.
the outsourcing of using your brain to come up with an email, to come up with doing a project, like all of these things have just for them gone down because technology's all over the place. Like when you and I grew up, I mean, we still went to the library. We still had we did have a little bit of technology, but you went to research. You know, you didn't go for
Yeah.
somebody to give you a paper. You know,
No,
and
no.
it's
I
hard
started
to
college with a word processor.
right. I mean, I remember I had the little Toll Brothers that had like a screen like this, and I was like, I'm so cool. I can type and see now. You know, instead of just
Yeah,
typing it out
right.
the backspace. You know, it's like they have no idea. But I see what's happening with this generation is their critical
Right,
thinking is not the same as what you and I had, and
right.
the other thing is the mind influence because of algorithms and because of what they
Yes.
see. They're not thinking for themselves. It's like they're just being in a trance and they believe whatever they hear. I'm like, it's like TikTok University. I tell my children, it
TikTok University. I
I'm
like
like, where
that.
did you learn that? You know, because during COVID, there was a lot of, you know, and my daughter would always say, she come out with these facts, you know, at dinner. And I'm like, where'd you learn that? She's like, TikTok. So like by the fifth day, I'm like, I mean, are you just doing TikTok University in your room? Like, it's great that you're like kind of learning a little bit, but if you learn something, then go research it because what you're seeing is a 15-second clip of something that you're taking as the gospel,
Absolutely.
and it's not true all the time.
Absolutely.
You know, you're talking one person's opinion, you're talking, there's so many things, you know,
Absolutely.
and technology can be used for good, but it's a slippery slope. And our
It's just,
children's generation, like this generation of the teens and early 20s, are the first ones to really go through life with a
mhm.
handheld device from basically early age and up. And
Agreed. Agreed.
it is frightening. And so the common sense, the things that, so I think body authority, you know, and trying to get them to understand like our body is intrinsic. Like we have a gut feeling, we have we're built to
Right.
do these things, and we're taking
Right.
away the power of the God-given things we were given.
Right. And then it's hard enough. Thank you so much for saying all that. That was so well said and articulate. Um, we're never really taught to trust those things to begin with, which is
Yeah.
also
Oh,
problematic,
100%.
the gut
Yeah.
knowing, right? So it's like you have to fight so hard just to even know who you are and what you feel.
Yeah.
That I have a predominantly I have an issue with that at a fundamental level that we are just from the get-go in school, right? You're put in and it's just disconnection city.
Yeah.
It's disconnect, don't feel, sit there. No, you and we're, this idea of feeling and sensitivity has been branded as this like what I want to say negative feminine quality
Mhm.
as we've allowed what I want to say a lot of the negative masculine qualities. And again, it's not about anti-men, I love men, but like this anti-masculine of like do it at all cost, shut it off, because the masculine gift is they can like shut everything off and be in battle or whatever they've got to do, hunt and do something, right? They want society living like that. So, and guess what? It doesn't work that way, and we'd have to only look around to see it doesn't work. So, what I
Correct.
really feel on a side note is that not only is this coming back to feeling not a detriment or not a weakness, but it's a power.
Mhm.
Because when you have everybody around you and their energy is being harvested and they are just being pulled out of themselves, if you really know who you are in this world, what you feel and what you stand for, that is the kind of leadership that's going to get us out of this mess. Because
Yeah.
it's definitely not going to come from what's being created and what we're seeing right now. That's a side note, but
Yeah.
just
And I
apropos
think,
to,
but again, that
yeah.
really, what that's bringing up for me is returning power
Mhm.
to self, right?
Yes,
Returning
absolutely.
thinking to self, returning good
Absolutely.
judgment to yourself, you know? And so, and
Absolutely.
again, you're right. School teaches you, listen to your teacher knows everything. learn from your teacher, regurgitate. It doesn't really teach you a lot of critical thinking and things until you take certain classes and you get that special teacher, right? You get a special teacher every once in a while that really
If you're
understands
lucky.
teaching, if you're lucky, but understands
Yeah.
teaching and teaches you how to think for yourself, right?
Right.
And God bless those teachers because we need a lot more of them. But what I'm seeing is women are different, and we've been
Women are
stifled
different.
to be to like fit into that masculinity. But what I've found in the health world is the same thing. Like we've been conditioned to, well, your doctor knows everything, you just listen to them. I mean, we went to the same doctor, my mom died
Absolutely.
on the hill,
Yes.
whatever the doctor said was it. And I do believe our generation of women are now coming up and speaking up and saying, I don't know how that makes me feel. And it's poo-pooed on,
Yeah.
but whatever. And again, it will become more common knowledge as more women wake up to like, oh no, I actually have a voice. I can use my voice. I can ask the questions. And so I think the
Yes.
empowerment of coming to self, like, and feeling secure in yourself to be able to advocate, to be able to speak up, to not put up with a rhetoric that just doesn't make sense, and I
Absolutely.
want my kids to know that, right? Like, if nothing else, even though they're coming from the tech world and they're squashed, I want them to understand when you have a self embodiment, when you love yourself, when you respect yourself, you will speak up for yourself.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, I love
in the
that so much, Robin.
darkness, right? In the darkness, we're going to create light. Like I know that, like I see it, I feel it. There are some shifts happening that I try to like stay focused on instead of all the negative. But social media, I think for some kids is just really detrimental to their self, the way they think of themselves, the way they feel,
Absolutely. It's an
keeping up with the
incorrect mirror.
Joneses.
Yeah.
It's just it's nauseating, to be honest with you. Some of the things that I witness and see, and I'm just like, the misguidance, right, of how life really actually works is very far-fetched for some children right now because of whatever the reasons, and I could name 100 of them, but that's not really important. But I feel like those kids are really disconnected from reality sometimes because of the way they live their lives, because that's okay with their family unit. And so they're going to have a lot of work to do, is my point, when they, and so I'm trying to educate my kids, and drop little things here and there. Not, I mean, everybody still has work to do at some point for whatever, you go through, but it,
Mm.
what I think about school also, when you were bringing up school and just it, if I could go back, I would do things differently. It
Mm.
stifles them, right? It stifles,
Absolutely.
and you have a few negative experiences and literally you carry that in your mind and all the good is like poofed away, and so yeah, it's an interesting time, that's for sure. But
It's an interesting time, and I love that you are standing for what you're standing for. And I was having a conversation about just some of these different dynamics with a friend about a month ago, and something I said out loud that made me think about what you were saying is women are the wake-up call.
oh, absolutely,
Like I
100, a
just really
mom,
see women
yeah,
being the wake-up call
yeah,
for like we're sounding the alarms, and the
yeah,
mama bears are just saying like, yeah, this isn't the world that I'm leaving for my kids. No thanks.
yeah,
And to get what you were saying also around handing the keys of our body over to doctors and such that were trained in what I'll call Rockefeller medicine, which is just about prescribing drugs and performing surgery. They were not taught, and it's not their fault. They're not bad people, but they're just not taught to look at the body in a holistic way.
right.
So when you have somebody who's looking at your body in terms of a machine, we have to do so much of our own advocacy just to say, hey, wait a minute, like cutting this thing off is not going to serve the deeper problem here. And to find a doctor that actually looks at the body in a holistic way, that looks at the mental, emotional, the lifestyle, as well as the physical. You have to find like a naturopath. You have to find,
Yeah,
something that's harder to find just to get basic care. So it is incredibly problematic. And I really do hope that our generation is not too distracted to continue the fight that we've started
I don't think so.
around.
I mean, at least that, again,
Yeah.
my community of people that
Oh, that's
they're
great.
they're speaking. I mean, I don't ever really foresee them stopping. However,
Amazing.
talking about the whole doctor thing, I do give
Yeah.
them grace in a way because that is
Yes.
how they were trained. But I just feel like at some point you need to assume some responsibility. You need to, you're
Sure.
having to, and you should be educating yourself every year on new things and whatever. And there, any doctor
Absolutely.
that says they don't know or hear anything outside of what they typically do,
Hmm.
That's not really a doctor I want to go to, right? Like I want people that are forward thinking. I want people that, you know what, maybe I got trained in this, but I do see now the body connection. You don't just have a liver, like your liver, you don't just, everything's
Right.
connected. So if you're just,
Hmm.
siloing everything, you're never going to heal somebody well. Again, there's a time and place for medicine, surgery, things like that. Totally agree. It's a great
Absolutely.
thing that we all know, but
Hmm.
we need to have more individualized care from a whole body lens, not just
Hmm.
like you were saying, spiritual, physical movement, your
Hmm.
relationships, all of the things off your plate that feed your soul. Because if those are out of balance, we call them primary foods, your secondary on your plate, it doesn't really, matter that much what you're actually ingesting. I mean, there's so much. But I
There's so
really
much
wanted to
to
just
it.
tap into the emotional side because I feel like because we have grown up, most of us, especially midlife, believing this certain dynamic that we needed to be a certain way and we had to be strong and tough and had to be the CEO and the mom and the this and the and do it all well. There's a lot of
Hmm.
emotional things that people carry, right? And so one of
Hmm.
the things in connecting emotion to somatics, how can somatics help somebody as they begin the journey, because everybody is on a journey, right? As they begin the journey of unraveling some of the emotional stuff they might not even know they're carrying.
How do they begin unraveling?
Yeah, like using somatics. Like how does that
Yeah,
play
absolutely.
into the
Absolutely.
emotional portion
Me
of it?
too. Um, so what and again, it goes back to what we've been talking about in starting the relationship with the body. So when starting the relationship with the body is feeling, and it's the number one thing people don't want to do because they're afraid of going into something that they might not be able to handle if they let the floodgates open, if they let themselves feel, if they haven't been feeling for a few decades, really feeling, they're, concerned about what might
Mm,
happen. So if that's the case, I would say work with someone who has a somatic background, who has the capacity, even if it's a yoga teacher, even if it's a mindfulness teacher, but
mm,
so that you don't feel unguided in the process. But as you get your feet wet with it and you start to realize that feeling is an empowerment and not a detriment, because as you know, and as I know, when you get through the other side of something, there's everything that you've ever really wanted, the confidence, the capability, the know-how, all of the things that you want, but you don't know how to access, that society's trying to sell you in these different ways, is on the other side of feeling, is on the other side of owning and integrating those parts of us that maybe were disowned. So,
I
getting
love that.
yourself in front of a person who has the capacity to hold the space for you to feel, whoever that might be, whoever you feel safe with. Trust your nervous system. If you're in a person's presence and you feel clamped up or closed down, that's not the right person for you. Even if they say, this is a safe space, if you feel like it's not, it's not.
Right.
Um, and what I want to say in terms of an easy get in there, practice what you're feeling in a everyday normal situation. Like, oh, like what does my body, like I'm hungry right now. What's going to give me the most energy? Oh, I think, and just beginning to ask some of those questions, like,
Questions, right?
what
Like
am I
questions that, yeah,
feeling?
you just kind of, again, blaze through life where you're not really
Lives through
looking.
life. Yeah, what am I
So
feeling? What would give me the right energy? And this
I
isn't
love that.
everybody's process, but journaling is a great tool because if you have a safe place, even if you don't have a safe person, but if you have a safe place to write down the things that you're holding, especially before you go to bed at night, you'll sleep a lot better, number one. But it gives you a place to reflect on, this is what I noticed today, and this is what transpired. Even having like a small feeling journal, like these are the top 5 things that I noticed in my practice of becoming more aware of what I feel. I notice when I'm around this person, this thing comes up for me. I notice that when I go to this one particular place that I leave with a headache. I
Mm,
notice that, and just bringing in safe awareness that
mm,
starts giving you more switched on abilities to trust what's already happening, what's already being communicated to you, but we've just got dialed down so much because we've got all these notifications coming through. We've got
Doesn't
all these
allow us
things
to
to
pause,
do.
right? Like I love that. Such a beautiful
Yeah.
takeaway. And that's what I want everyone to walk away with. We talk about 1% shifts on in this community. And what I want you to walk away with this week is just giving yourself the opportunity to pause, to feel a feeling, and then talk about the feeling, even if it's just in your mind, if it's not out loud, if you're in a crowd, whatever, talk about the feeling, start to notice. And once you start doing that and it becomes a practice, you will start, things will start to unravel. And I think that's such a great takeaway. So we're going to kind of leave it there. I think everybody has something they can do as they're walking away from the episode. There's so much more we can get into. And so you
Part
can
two.
follow, which, yeah, we will have a part 2. I totally can see that. But also, I'll drop all the information of where Allison lives, and not lives physically, but lives online, and, her website and things like that. So that way you guys can go check her out and see, and again, connect with somebody who feels safe to you. So just as we wrap up, I always ask every guest, what are a few non-negotiables that you live by every day that allows you to show up in your best version?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. And thank you for all that you contributed to the conversation today. I loved hearing your different insights.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, so for me, movement as a daily practice is a non-negotiable first thing in the morning. Getting out in nature and sunlight is a non-negotiable. And having connective conversations that bring through deeper levels of intimacy is a
Ooh, I love
non-negotiable in
that.
my life
Okay, so
at
I
this
want to point
point.
out those are
Mhm,
3 free things that people could do, because we always talk about
mhm,
people's non-negotiables because it gives us ideas of what we could try on and see how it feels. And those are free. Movement outside is free. Movement in your house is free. You don't have to go to a gym. You don't have to join. That shouldn't be a barrier. Nature, being in the sunlight, I mean, that's free unless you live, somewhere where there's zero sun, but, we can work around that. I'm sure there's some sunlight. And I think your third one's amazing, like connecting with people, having conversations that are meaningful, that when you walk away, you feel energized rather than depleted. Like, I think that's so, so important that we start recognizing the people that deplete us and start moving away. And not because you don't like them, just because it's wrecking your energy, right? Like, you need to move to
mhm.
people who are feeding your energy and making you, basically uplifting you up. So,
Absolutely.
um,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's become a non-negotiable,
I love that.
for
I love
sure.
that.
Yeah.
And I think in midlife, I think that is something that just naturally starts happening for, I mean, everybody I talk to, that's kind of the common theme. So I think that would resonate with a lot of people. If you haven't done it, try it
Being
out and
aware of your
see.
circle.
Yeah.
Yeah, being
Yeah.
aware yeah, who you surround yourself with really matters.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. All
absolutely.
right. So all of you guys have your homework for the week. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, if you like this podcast, share it with another mama or woman friend that you know that needs to hear this information. And Allison, thank you so much for your wisdom. And I love your story. Thank you for going through your
Mm,
journey to be able to carry it to a place that you're now being able to impact other people at a bigger level than just kids in a classroom or, in a dance studio.
likewise.
So
And thank you so much for all you do to share this work. I appreciate it.
absolutely. Have a great afternoon, and I'll see you guys next week. That episode had so many great takeaways. I hope you feel inspired and more empowered to make small 1% shifts on your wellness journey this week. I'd love to hear what resonated with you. If you want to leave a review, share your thoughts, and let me know how you're going to be implementing these 1% shifts into your life. And don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with another mama who could use a little wellness love. Want to stay connected? Join me on Instagram and Facebook at Live Life Balanced with Robin. Check out my website at livelifebalancedwithrobin.com for more resources, and grab yourself some freebies while you're there. Until next time, I hope you find peace, love, and light by breathing, being present, and allowing for all possibilities to come your way. See y'all next week. Love to y'all.